Welcome to the pocket hole solution to building a router table. The project featured in this video will provide you with the assembly skills needed to build this sturdy and practical router table. With pocket hole joinery as its foundation, this project combines the experience of a master woodworker with the high quality of Kreg pocket hole tools and accessories. Pocket hole joinery is an extremely fast, strong, and simple method of joining wood, making it one of the most popular joinery techniques available today. We're confident that after watching and reviewing this video, you'll be able to create your own custom router table cabinet. Be sure to check out Kreg's variety of entertaining reference materials, including educational videos, book sets, and project plans at www.kregtool.com.
Hi, I'm John Silloats. This is a router table cabinet that I made. I made this router table cabinet faster, stronger, and simpler with this, the K2000 Kreg jig. Now, the reason I like a router table is for safety purposes, because of the height and because of the fact that I can bring a small piece of wood to a heavy router as opposed to a heavy router to a small piece of wood. The other part about this is dust collection. Dust collection is very important, especially from not only the top portion, but underneath the router as well. As dusty as everything becomes and sends airborne into your shop, it's best to keep it confined and keep your shop dust-free. The idea here is, and the concept is, keep the cabinet inside smaller and also draw from the bottom, and in this case I can also draw from the top, because once the vacuum system goes on, this whole cabinet becomes the dust control or the dust extraction for the entire unit. By having this door closed, dust stays in there, and it now gives me a lot of extra space to make dust-free drawers here that will house my bits so that I have easy access to them, and they're right here where the table is as well. Now, for the next step is add in some drawers. And again, this is going to add weight to this unit, because the more weight you add to the unit, the more stable it becomes as well. Here at the bottom, I put in 2 drawers, but you could put in 2 cabinet doors to open up side by side and have that a full cavity to store things that may not necessarily relate to the router table, but may have things close by that could actually be put in there for storage. Now for the wheels, well, I finally found a set of wheels that are really good here, because these wheels, not only when they're locked, don't turn, but they also don't pivot, which is important for a router table or important for any tool that you have in the shop so it doesn't move around. The nice part about it again is weight. You want as much weight as possible, because once those wheels are locked in position, the table is not going to move. As far as coming up with the concept and design and plan of the table, what I've done was I've taken some dimensions, some standard dimensions here. And let's build a box here. So we've built the box, comes like so. That's our cabinet. There's our cavity. Here's our 2 drawers for our bits. And whether it's a shelf or whether it's a cupboard door, there's our base. Now, to determine the height, and again, 36 inches, that's a standard kitchen top height. As far as the top goes, well, this one here is 1 1/8 inch thick, which is a standard thickness for most tops as well. Now, we're looking at top sizes. 24 by 32 is most common, and I would recommend that you buy one and not build one, because by the time you come up with all this, put your router in position as well, you're going to find that you're spending more time doing that, and it'll be a lot easier for you to buy a top as well. Now, the next thing I want to come in is I want to put my wheels in here. Now, in this case, my wheels are 5 inches, and that's a good height to have, because it's, again, a 4-inch wheel, but by the time all the metal framing is on there, it gives you that height. With 1 1/8 on top, that gives me a 6 1/8. Taken away from 36, well, that's going to give me 29 7/8, and I don't want to work with that fraction. So I make this distance from the cabinet to under the table to the top of the wheels 30 inches. And that 1/8 of an inch is not going to make that much of a difference. So let's take this plan and get started on the cabinet. As far as starting off, we've cut the bottom first. Now the bottom is 26 inches wide, 21 1/4 inches deep, because our tabletop is 24 inches in depth, so we want to make sure that we're at least in 1 inch from both ends. The other thing that I do then is I pre-cut the first shelf that goes above. And with cutting that shelf, I want to make that 21 1/4 deep as well, but only 24 1/2 inches wide. And the reason in this case now is that I'm going to add that on and use it as a jig. With all the pieces cut to size, I start off with the base first. Now what I do is I measure in and drill my holes now for the wheel plate. And the advantage of that is, if you start putting the secondary shelf on, you're going to have to go with a 45-degree or a 90-degree angle drill, and you don't want to do that. You want to be able to get at it now, so it's easier to position it, mark it, and then also drill the holes. The other nice part is, and the part that you want to do here is, before putting all the pieces together, make sure you measure in far enough. Remember that front cabinet drawer has to go in there, so you want to make sure you've got at least 3/4 of an inch space. So give yourself about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches so that face of the drawer can go in and clear those tops of those carriage bolts that are going to go in here. First gable goes up on this side. And I'm just dry fitting it right now because I am going to put pocket hole screws in here on the inside, and you'll never see those because once the drawer goes in place, they're going to be hidden. Now there they are. Those are the 5 holes I'm going to use. And again, you don't need a lot here because by the time we put a little bit of glue on here and those 5 pocket holes, that's going to be a really strong joint. Now, line this all up. This is where I'm going to start to use these clamps. Take a bit of glue, and I'm just going to run a light bead down here. Not really heavy. One light bead all the way down. And just give it a quick little wipe like this, just to spread it out evenly. Save that for the next piece you're going to be using, because you will use it again. Set this up in place. Make sure there's no sawdust in there. Press that into it. Line up the front. Next step, take my pocket holes, and where the clamps are, put them in position. That just helps it from pushing it backwards, and it keeps pushing it out, and it keeps it nice and tight to that center shelf. So when this center shelf is brought up into position, it's going to give us a nice square box. Now those are my screws in place. With that glue, this will set up in no time at all. Strength. Take the shelf out now, and this is the top of the shelf. So I want to put pocket holes here as well. I'm going to start off in the middle again and work either way. So halfway down and about 1 inch away from the edge again. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to bring this up 14.5 inches. So instead of trying to balance that, what I've done is just out of some scrap, created some spacers. And those spacers, 14.5 exactly. And what I do is I put one in each corner, just like this. Taking a clamp just to secure it, got a few extra little clamps here. Just a spring-loaded clamp on there just to secure it in place, like so. So what I want to do now is I want to add glue onto these pieces, but I want to make sure that I don't want to run glue all the way down the sides. So I take a spreader clamp and just set that in place like so, and just spread the walls of this just ever so slightly, just so I can get that piece in. Bring this up like so, and I'm going to make that my front corner. Bring it in, and slowly set it in place. Again, we don't want to run it down this whole side, so that gives us a really nice finish. Just cutting out one little corner there, which is fine. Take that off, And line up the front portion, line up the side, and that's my top portion here. The next thing I want to use is my right angle clamps. Now these are really nicely designed to actually fit into the pocket hole itself, and you clamp it in place, hold it flush at the front, and hold it together. This, remember, with the glue, once you put the screws in and that glue starts setting up, you are going to have a really tight joint here. So you want to make sure that you've got a nice hold there and hold it in position. One on either end keeps it nice and straight and allows me now then to put in my pieces here. Just check underneath quickly, make sure it's all touching all those corners. Screw in there. Here. And here. Now, just because this glue sets up in 20 minutes, well, it sounds like it's a fast time to dry, but when you think about it, if I have to sit here and wait for this clamp to hold this on for 20 minutes, I wouldn't be able to keep moving like I am here now. And by being able to clamp those in position, put the pocket holes in, and put the pocket screws through, it just lets me now keep going and building the project. Now the next step here is to do the same process on the other side and to use the clamps again. Now if you notice, this fits into that pocket hole, and this side here is able to pivot so it actually goes into place and holds it where you want it to. Coming around to this side now, again, just slip it in and clamp it into place. The next thing I want to do is I want to take my compass and I want to draw a 4-inch hole there. So I've made this one up, take it in place, measure it out 2 inches, set the center point there, and just give it a little bit of a push so it locks in, and follow that through, and that's going to be the hole that I want to cut out. Now, in order to set that up as well, bring this back and bring this into just 5.5 inches, which should be just enough and will be enough to find that center point there as well. Coming up from the inside, 10 inches there and 10 inches here. I'm just going to move that over just a slight bit. Take my square edge here, my 90-degree angle, and just line it up so that it's in place like so. This is just a rough line up right now, because what's going to happen is we're going to cut that out, and once we do cut that out with the jigsaw, we're going to go back underneath and we're going to realign this to make sure it's exactly where it has to be. By using a 3/8 inch Forstner bit, I create a hole just back from the line so that I can set my blade in for my jigsaw and do a nice clean cut and follow around on the inside of that pencil line so the pencil line is left and exposed. The next step, once that piece falls out, is just sand with a small drum sander, clean up that profile so that you have a nice smooth area, and then take your router and follow it through with a router with a 1/4 inch round over bit, just to give it a rounded edge so there's no sharp edges to inhibit or just to block the dust from falling in that hole. The next step is to set the interior gables in. Now, these are the spacers I'm going to use, but these are actually the size of the cavity of the hole. And if you set them in place, I'm going to take this first piece here and just show you off of this side. What I want to do is, if I want to put this piece in place, I set this up and measure the height. And now this is 21 1/4 inches deep, and it comes flush to the top. And in this case, it's 14 inches and a 1/16 of an inch, just so that it keeps consistent with the level. Best way to measure that up is after you've cut that length. If you find that it's still a little proud, take it back to the table saw and just take that little bit off. By using this spacer, which is now going to be actually the top, I'm just going to drop that down and use it as a jig so that I get the exact measurement at the bottom, and when this is transferred to the top, you'll have a nice square box in the whole finished process. Set this in place, and what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the good side of both these finishes, because you will see these. And this is now that cavity, that box, which is actually the whole dust collection system itself. I'll first put 5 holes on the outside here, because you're not going to see these, because they will be covered up by that flared angle which draws the dust and the wood shavings down into the hole. I'm I'm going to center it again. Just find myself a center mark. You don't have to lay these out, but if you wish and you want to put pencil lines there, you can, but after a while, you'll just find that it's just as easy to follow through, pick the locations, and finish off the project. Now I'm going to come back again about an inch from that end. Back through here. And one more to there. So a bead of glue, just running all the way nice and down the outside here, right down along that bottom piece. Good. Just flare that out a little bit with your finger, wipe off the excess, and now come back into place and set it up like so. And remember, I'm working off the front side here, so I want to make sure that this is always the clean edge. If there's a little bit of difference back here, no problem, because it can be sanded down. And once again, use my right angle clamp, just drop that into place like so, lock it in, come around to the other side, drop it in again, make sure it's nice and tight, and that's it. That's going to hold it in place. Put a screw in the center, and follow through with a few more. And what we'll do is we'll lock them in position here by putting these pocket screws into the holes. Work on the 2, 3 holes in the center here. Remove the clamp. And again, just keep an eye on this, and it's still nice and tight, so that's great. And come around to the other side. Take the clamp off. The process is repeated there. Perfect. Great. As I said, this is going to be our spacer, so yep, it's going to be tight, but guess what? It is going to fit perfectly once we get it out of here. There it is. So this now will slide up, and we'll put a series of pocket holes on the top here. But let's finish off this side first. We'll take this, the 2 tops, and I want to show you another machine that the Kreg Jig Company has brought out with, and this is the Foreman. Now this is great if you've got a small production company or you've got a big production company, because you can actually do the same thing with all the pocket holes, except do it at a quicker rate and a better speed. With this now, what I'm going to do is, this is my good side, so I make sure I flip it over, and I can actually use this whole unit as a jig itself, because I've got the outsides, I've got the inside markings, and I also have these side supports, and I'll show you how that works. Let me show you what the inside looks like. Basically, it's the drill, and it's inside here, pneumatic drill. And what happens is, it's applied by air pressure. When I pull on the handle, presses the board down, and the drill comes up and makes that pocket hole exactly the same way as we do with the K2000. The difference with this is, it allows me to go a little quicker and get a little faster with the project as well. Put the lid on, set it in place. Remember, good side down. Pick the center point. Move it over to one side, use that edge as a jig. Move it over to the other side, use that edge as a jig. And now I come over and I can figure out a spot right about there. Again, same thing, I want to come in about an inch. And guess what? That sure makes for a quick pocket hole to go in there. The next step is to do the top portions. And this again, I'm going to look at picking the center part, moving it over to the edge, moving it over to the edge, lock it in place like so, and what it does is it makes it easier for me to be repetitive in the same bits and pieces that I'm doing. Go on to this side. There's my 5 holes. Repeat the processes again on the other side. Position it in the center. One to the end. Coming out to the stop. Bringing it back through, flat on the end. And to the stop again. So the Kreg Foreman is actually a really good tool if you've got a lot of production to do or you're drilling a lot of pocket holes. So it's something you might want to think of investing into. What's important here is not to install this top first, because what I want to do is I want to attach this full extension slider to the top and to the bottom of this box and also to the cabinet itself. So prior to putting this on, this piece here, we're going to install the slider. Now let me show you what I mean. First thing I want to do is I want to take out the section that attaches onto the drawer. And by pulling this out, you'll see that there's a little lever here. By pressing that down and continue pulling it through, it ends up taking this out, and this will go on the drawer itself, where this portion will be attached to the box. This is the front end, so we switch it around like so, set it in place, and because of that 4-inch cavity, if I use a 1 3/8 inch spacer, it gives me a nice distance there. It lines it dead in the center, and by using a 3/4 inch piece of birch ply at the front here, it also lines up exactly where I'm going to go with that face of the drawer when I put it on. Now I'm taking a drill bit here. Now that drill bit is a centering point bit, and what it does is it'll go into the hole, and once it's set into that hole, it will actually give me the pinpoint of where I want to go with the screw itself. I reverse it, and with a number 5/8 inch screw, I lock that in place. Move this down to the end. Again, it doesn't matter at the end now where I put that spacer, because I don't need an end spacer, because this is going to be the back side of our cabinet. Bring this down again, set it in place like this, and push down. Flip it over. Set the screw on. And that's the center mark of that whole drawer slide all the way down. So what I do is just I finish off and repeat the process in additional holes. Now that I've installed the sliders in the bottom of the bit storage drawers, it's time to install them on the top. Now remember, this is the top portion of that cabinet, and the reason I didn't want to put that in first is because it's going to be a lot easier to install these sliders first. Let me show you how. Same process. Because I know, for example, on the left side, I'm going to go this way. So on the bottom, I've put the left, and I've put the S for the spacer. Because I worked off the spacer on the left-hand side of the bottom, I also want to work off the left-hand side at the top. Now there's why it's important to add these two in while you've got the tops off, so that you don't have to reach up underneath. Now, the next step here is I'm going to put these in place, but guess what? I'm not going to glue these in, because I want to be able to have access to this should the sliders ever break down or the bearings ever break. And this allows me to take the top off, and also allows me to take the pocket hole screws out, work on it, put it back in place, and put it back together. By using my angle clamp here, my right angle clamp, line it up like so, squeeze it in place, come down to the other end, set it in place like so, line it up, and again, just make sure it's flush to the top. Better shy than proud. This side come down just a little bit, which is fine. Perfect. Exactly the way I want it. Now, same process, start off in the middle. Off to the edge here. Without using glue, these are stronger. It's a simpler way to do this, and it's a faster way to do this as well, because I don't have to wait for any glue up time, and I don't have to wait for any clamping time either. Now, I'm going to take a longer clamp and set this down the side here, because it's just a little out of alignment, and I want to straighten that out. So I'm straightening it out like this, putting it in, lines up the fronts, taking my right angle clamp, come to the back first, follow it down and through, clamp it in, taking this one, setting it in the hole, and just bring that up a touch. Perfect. And I repeat the same process on the other side. There, that's how easy it is to build this cabinet with the help of the K2000 pocket hole jig and a little bit of help from the foreman. Next, I'm going to put some dividers in here, and we're going to start building our dust collection area where we're going to keep everything nice and tight and show you how to build that box.
Kreg Tool also offers many accessories, including face clamps, right-angle clamps, coarse and fine-threaded self-tapping screws, and much more. The versatility of pocket hole joinery gives it the power to benefit any level of woodworker. For the dealer nearest you, call 800-447-8638 or visit www.kregtool.com today.
The next step is to reduce that cavity size because of where the router plate is located. So this now will sit back in place and make that box a lot smaller. Remember, we've got 21¼ inches here that we want to bring down in size, because the smaller that box is, the better the draw in taking the chips out. Now this one here itself, the router plate is really mounted closer to the front than normal. And with this one here, if you look at this is a style that usually has about the average setup for a router table. It's just a bit further back from the front, but we don't have a spacer in here. What we've done is I've shrunk the box down so it gives me a smaller size as well. Back to here, what I want to do is put this in place, drill a 2-inch hole in the back here so I can put my dust collection port through here, which is going to take away the debris coming from the top that's going to run off the blade or the bit itself. If you look inside, you'll see that hole, and that's the hole that we have to create in the back here to match up to do the draw. Now what I want to do here is I want to find that location for that hole, and I found that if you come down 10½ inches and divide that 14-inch width in half, you'll get 7 inches. And that'll be your mark where you're going to put your drill bit through. Sacrificial board underneath, and what I want to do is drill that 2-inch hole to accept this plastic portion of the 2-inch dust collection system. Line it up. There's our hole. The advantage of that board, it's a backing board so we don't get the tear out in here. This isn't the part you're going to see anyways, because this will be in the back of the area, and the front cavity portion here, this will set in place. Now, it's not bad here, and it's going to be sufficient. If you find that this is a little too tight, you may want to take it to a spindle sander and just clean that out on the spindle sander until this fits flush into that piece as well. With this, remember, we have a backing board going on here, the back of the cabinet, so that is why the longer extension here, so it'll accommodate this port outlet here to attach into. The next thing I want to do is, I want to put pocket holes in on the back side of this now, because this is how I'm going to attach it. So again, by setting it in place, and just offsetting that hole, I'm going to put 4 holes across the bottom. Now to the sides. And again, you don't need a lot here. All this is going to do is just help support it and keep it in that position where it is. Now's the time to install this divider. Now with all these pocket holes in here, I'm not going to add any glue to this, because what I'm going to do is set this in, dry fit this in first, and I've measured back 16 inches from the front for this specific router table itself, and slide this down. Now, keeping it nice and tight is going to do the trick for it here. Set it in place like so, line it up to the lines, and by using a square, set it in place along the side and knock it into position. Good there, and good there. You can also see down the top here to make sure that it's lined up right. Now, with an angle screwdriver here, I'm going to take the drill and put a number 8 coarse pocket hole screw in here. It's 1¼ inches long, so it's ample and it won't go through the box as well. Now that's fairly snug. If you've got a bit of cracks and line showing in there, you could take a little bit of caulking and put the caulking in there as well to make it much more tighter, but this is going to be sufficient. It's not going to require anything because there's no crack space in there at all. And the next step is just to finish putting in the screws. The next step is to cut these 45-degree mitered inserts. Now, what's done here is we take it to the table saw. We tilt the blade at a 45-degree angle, and we put an auxiliary fence on our fence that's there. The reason is that once I cut the angle on the one side and I flip it over, the really sort of pointed part of the 45-degree angle will sometimes slip under the fence, causing it to give you an irregular cut or even jam. So by having that auxiliary fence there, it makes it safer to operate. And remember, use a push stick when putting it through. Now that I have these 4 pieces cut on the 45, the next step is to take the pieces and cut one edge off. Now I'm going to reverse that 45 and this time cut it on the miter saw, sitting up like this as it's going to fit into the box, and do the right-hand side or the left-hand side here first on all of these. Then come back and measure off each piece individually. Let me show you how. Setting in place, I'm going to come off here. I'm going to pinch it into the position that I want, and remember it's the 45 I'm looking for. Come through, move it over slightly, and this will cradle nicely into the compound slide saw here. Now, the next step is to take the board, and the box is the same size at the front and back as I've checked earlier. With a pencil line, mark a pencil line right here, and this is the first piece that I'm going to cut. Trying that out. Perfect. Now, to measure out this next portion, I come into the inside, bring it in like so, and I want to come back in this time, I want to come back 3/4 of an inch because that's for the cabinet and for the door itself. Now that everything's dry fitted, the next step is to glue this all together and stick it in place. Now in placing these in, I'm only using glue to hold them in position. Now that glue will set up overnight, and it'll actually set up in about 20 minutes and give me a good hold. No fasteners are required here. You don't have to put any extra nails in, and this works quite well this way. With a scrap piece of 3/4 inch stock, check to make sure that everything lines up nicely, and it does. Those sloped angles, very nice the way that fits in. Next step from here is to build the drawers that are going to hold our router bits and give us that dust-free storage. Now this router bit storage drawer is really simple to make. It's not that difficult. The nice part is that it keeps all the bits nice and dust-free, because once it slides in there, again, it's not going to get any dust on it, because dust is not going to come out of that cavity around the corner and slip inside. So the thing here is that you want to take your time in building this and customize it to the router bits that you have. Now the drawer here, it's not that complicated because of the fact that these are actually the same sliders we've used on the bottom drawers. On the bottom, they're just horizontal. Here, we've set them vertically so that they're at top and bottom. Now if you look over here at this one here, this is what it looks like before the faceplate goes on it. Now size is important here. We've got 3.5 inches wide. The drawer is 4.5 inches, or the cavity where the drawer sits into is 4.5 inches wide. The faceplate on the front has to be taken into consideration too, of 3/4 of an inch. So now with the depth, we've got 20 inches for this in total, and 3/4 for this for 20 3/4, which gives us about a 1/2 inch space at the back. So really easy to put together. The nice part about this is that this little frame is the first part that gets built. This portion at the bottom, the bigger stock, well, that's in there for more stability here. If I use 3/4 all the way through, it wouldn't be as rigid, and that just sort of tightens it up completely. Now, we'll look at these different pieces, but each one of these pivots in the middle, and all that's done is a screw is taken and put in at the end, and I put them in the place, tighten them to the amount that I wanted, and then once that's finished, that's it. Now, ever down the road you want to change that plan, or you want to redo one of these sections, just take off the faceplate, take the 2 screws out, and remodify the insert as well. Here are the pieces, here are the components. Now, all these were done on a drill press, and they're all done with a 1/2 inch Forstner bit, and the smaller holes are done with a 1/4 inch. Now, you could do it this way, but I don't recommend it because you may end up going in on a different angle, Your bits are going to go off cockeyed. The hole may not be the same size, so you want to make sure a drill press is best for this. So here are the pieces: the bottom, the center, the top, and the very top that mounts onto the slider. The two side pieces together, remember the opening of the hole, in this case it's 14 inches, so we want that total to add up to 13 because we need 1 inch for the drawer slides. Put that all together and there's our unit. That's the way it sets up. Screw, glue on two ends here, and then attach these later, and what I've done is, for me, I've spaced them out 3 inches apart. Depth on the holes, well, that's about maybe 3/8 to 5/8 max. And again, type of wood you use, that's up to you. I like using a softwood because it's forgiving. Should it swell, you can move the bit back and forth a bit, enlarge the hole, and pull it out, so it makes it a lot easier to work with. The next step is to put the other half of the slider on the top, running it down the center and keeping it flush to the front of this unit here. Because again, when the faceplate comes on, you're not going to see that. When that's all said and done, dry fit it and make sure it fits, works well. Any adjustments that need to be made can be made now, and that's it. The drawer is ready to go. Now here's another good reason why I haven't installed the back yet. No handle to pull that out? Well, there you go. Push it forward and it comes right out again. Dry fitted, fits well. Now you could put this faceplate on now, or you could wait, but it's a good time to check here as well, and that's going to be great because it's going to fit in nicely there. And again, pop it out and I can get rid of it. All I'm going to do is attach through the back here. I'm going to put a couple of screws in through here and mount it. And if you use this pinpoint here and a pinpoint there, and again, equal sides, that should give you a good, nice, about 1/8 of an inch clearance all the way around. So that's a good way to do it. If you have to take this off, remember, undo the two screws, and then you have access to these screws to do the adjustment or to take these pivoting shelves out. Now, I'm going to be installing 2 drawers in this, so I'm going to put the casters in now. And by doing that, I'm going to take the casters. Remember that first part when we started off pre-drilling all those holes? Well, that was to accommodate the casters here. Using a carriage bolt, I'm going to come through the plywood at the top, drop through the 5/16, put a lock washer on and a nut. Now, don't worry about the length. You'll never find the right size. There never seems to be the right size of carriage bolt in length. So this is a soft metal and can cut easily with a hacksaw. Now, that allows the wheel to move freely, and you've got a really customized size, basically, of bolt here. With the back, what I'll do is I'll cut it to size, 30 inches high by 26 inches wide. I'll measure up from the bottom 10 3/4 inches, and that's the center point that we've determined that is the center of the exhaust system. And then the next piece I do is I come across and I divide 26 in half, which is 13 inches to the center of the board. At that point, I place in the compass and I make the hole 5 inches big, and the reason is that I want to allow room for the hose to come in, the connection in the hose and the clamp to come through the hole and grab onto the plastic pipe. The next step here is to take a Forstner bit, create a hole, then the jigsaw will go in that hole and follow the circle. I'll clean that circle up, and I can do that on the spindle sander. Then I go up to the top and I measure 13 inches across again and 10.5 inches down from the top, and using the 2-inch Forstner bit, drill a hole through for the dust collection port that is going to go into the box itself to accommodate the dust control that's going to happen on the fence. And even after all this has been done, I still do not attach the back. Now comes time for the drawer, and I'm going to show you how to make a simple, fast, and strong drawer box using the K2000 Kreg jig. But first, we need the dimensions. Now coming to the front here, we've got a total of 26 inches across, but I'm taking off the 2 side gables, and my inside measurement is going to be 24 1/2. By reducing this now by 1 inch will allow the room that I need for the sliders that are going to be on each side. So in total, my width is going to be 23.5 inches. The depth here now, I've got a cavity of 21 1/4. I'm going to make the drawer 20 inches because remember I have to put on that face of the drawer front here as well, so that's going to be 3/4 inch stock. So that gives me a little bit of room in the back to make some movement. So with all that in place, it's time to start marking our positions where we're going to put the pocket holes, and they'll be hidden. You won't see them at all. So this is going to be either the back or the front portion, and again, same with this. Because when the sides come down, it'll be nice and clean, and that face on the front of the cabinets will get a really good looking finish. Now that's given us our holes that we're going to be placing on the outside here. Now notice I've got this sitting on top of a 1/2 inch stock. Well, in this case, don't go anything less than 1/2 inch. and 3/4, again, that's a choice as well. So far we've used about a sheet and a half of 4x8 sheeting goods in birch ply here. So you will have extra stock left over if you want to put 3/4 inches on the bottom. I happen to have some 1/2 inch, and I'm going to utilize that 1/2 inch because, again, that 1/4 inch, compound that by 2 drawer slides, gives me an extra 1/2 inch of storage as well. So that's why I'm using the 1/2 inch. 1/4 inch, too flexible, too soft, because there's going to be a lot of weight in these drawer boxes, so don't use 1/4 inch ply on the bottom. Now the next step I want to do here is I want to take my pieces and I want to attach them now. I'll just lay this down in front. And by attaching this, I'm going to set it in place, dry fit it here first. That looks good. A little bit of glue, not a lot. Just going to help tighten everything up. Put it in place and just rub that in just that little bit. Bring this whole thing back. And by using my right angle clamp here, I'm going to pull this forward and set this in place like so. And there you have it. A simple, fast, and strong box, drawer box, to add into the cabinet. Next, we attach the sliders to the cabinet and then to the box as well. Putting in these sliders, what I first do is I put in a spacer here. And that's just to keep it up off the bottom and to stay clear of these heads of the bolts that are there. Next, set this in place and set it on top. And what I've done is I put a 3/4 inch line down the front. This is where I bring the front of the drawer slide up. I come around to the back here now, and this is the nice part about keeping the back off. I can get access to this right off the bat. Set a 1/2 inch piece in because that's going to keep us clear of our heads of the bolts that we put in. Come around to the front. Extend that out just that little bit. Bring the drawer box in place. Set it between the two sliders. That'll give it a nice cradle there. Pull that out and line it up like so. On this side, again, flush to the front. Reverse it over. There, that's how simple it is to build that drawer. Now, the second drawer, well, it's a little different. And not much as far as dimensions and size go, but because of the construction of it. I need an empty space in the center here to accommodate this elbow with the flange on it, and that elbow now has to fit down through. If I didn't utilize that drawer in there, I would have extra space wasted, so why not take the best of it as you can? What I did was, same design, same box design, but I've taken the back and moved it forward. I've put these cutouts in here for two reasons. Number one, you can reach in, and number two, you can use a long extension bit and screw the face of the drawer on as well. The extra side pieces, well, I've just dropped them down slightly just for a different contour so that it matches and also gives me a nice sort of big area to do some more storage. Now, if you notice, this whole piece is solid. I still have a whole bottom on here as well. And I want to cut this out because I want this little section in the middle here cut out so that I can actually get at the clamp that's going to hold the pipe onto the elbow itself. And by doing that, I'm going to do that on the table saw. What I'll do then is I'll drop the blade down into the table. And as I turn it on, I'll bring it up and kerf cut through. Now there will be an overcut on either side, but you won't see that. It'll be very slight. The next thing I want to do then is set up the fence from this side to here and start cutting out this portion. So when it's all done, this will be a clear open cavity to accommodate that elbow. There. Now it's time to add our drawer faces. What I've done here is I found the opening that I had there and I reduced it by 1/4 inch from top to bottom and 1/4 inch from sides, and that's going to give me a nice 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Then what I did was I cut it down the middle on the table saw so that the kerf cut is also 1/8 of an inch, so it gives me nice displacement all the way through. First thing I want to do here though is I want to clean these up and sand them and take off those rough edges. Now I'm going to attach the faces by using a pocket hole screw through the back of the drawer and into the face. Now it comes time to add the door. Now the door has really been one full piece, but I cut the bottom piece off for this little spacer in here. And all that does is it covers up that side piece where the 45-degree angle is showing. On top of that now, when I put the door in place, I'm going to raise it up about 1/8 of an inch because as the dust collection's on, I want a draft to come through here and I want it to pull down across the 45-degree angle top here and go right down into the hole. That'll keep that cavity clearer from all those chips. Now I've used a concealed hinge on here. The reason is it allows me to get in nice and tight so then I can also do some adjustments back and forth because inside here, here, and the top, there'll be some weather stripping to try and keep as much of the air from leaking in except for that one spot right there. Now that the door is in place, I've also included a little stop here, and that stop is just preventing the door from going through. So when it closes, you've got a nice flat surface. Again, the 1/8 of an inch space here for the air to draw through, and it gives it a really good finished look. From here, it's the back that finally goes on. Laying the cabinet down on its face is easier to attach the back. What I've done is I set the back in place, lined it up at the bottom first, where I put in 2 screws to square off the bottom. Then going over to the side that if you find there's a little irregularity or it might be out a bit, go to the side that is proud and push it and line it up so that it comes square to the actual back itself. Then continue with pocket hole screws and attach the back securely to the entire unit. Never use glue in this application. The reason not to use glue is that should it have to come apart for any repairs, it's easy to take the back off and work from the back end and the front end and giving you accessibility to all the cavities, drawers, and inserts. Using a number 8 pocket hole screw, coarse thread for this project. Well, no, not just yet. It's not time to put the top on. But what I want to talk about is a couple of things on the cabinet base itself. Well, number 1 is putting the hole in here for the cord to actually go through from the router. Because you want to make sure that's as airtight as possible too. You don't want a big hole in the end so that the big plug has to go through because again, it just reduces the amount of volume that we're going to create in this box. By putting this rubber adhesive down, the rubber sponge here, and put it all around the inside of the box. And I've put spacers out here so that what it does is it distributes the weight of the tabletop itself when it sits down there and keeps it nice and level. On the inside, what I've done is I've taken another type of weather stripping. It's a plastic type like this. Folds over and it's an adhesive back that sticks on. And all that does now is it fills the cracks on either side of the door. And with an additional piece, once this is all assembled, I'll put a piece like this underneath on the counter or under the top itself, and when the door closes, it'll make a tight seal across the top as well. The only place I want to draw here is at the bottom. I want that air to come through there so it falls over, cascades over the 45-degree side here and into the hole to keep that cavity clear. The next piece I want to do is I want to put in little clips. And I'm going to put little L brackets like this in. 2 here, 2 on the side, and 2 on the other side. On the inside only, so that I can also pull the top down and add a little support as well, so it's secured to the box itself. By taking the top, it goes 1 inch to the front, 1 inch to the back, and 3 inches off either side. Once that's done, insert plate goes in, and you're ready to router. Now over here, this is my prototype. This is what I worked off. And remember, we talked about the cabinet. The cabinet will suit any type of router, any type of tabletop, so that you can actually make this with no problem at all. The downside to some of the routers is that usually what happens is when you have a solid surface top like this and it doesn't lift, you can't get underneath and you're going to have to fight back and forth to change your bits. Well, guess what? This one here doesn't have that problem. The router lift actually comes up, and it comes up far enough that I can work on it from the surface. I don't have to work on it from below. So if you don't have a router lift, well, not to worry about that either, because I've come up with another design of table that when you look at this one, again, this is screwed into the surface. That top is there, and to change this bit normally, I would have to reach underneath and work on it from here. No, this is the way this one works. With 2 lid stays, I'm able to bring this up, lock it in place, and here's my router. No bending down, no trying to find out where everything is in that little dark hole there. Undo it, bring it down, work on my bit, change it, replace it, push it back up, and now I can also look down here, this plane, and see where my router bit is, and if I'm trying to match up to a profile, I just bring the profile in, match it up, lock it in place, close the lid, and I'm ready to go. And that's how easy it is to build a router table cabinet. With the K2000 Kreg jig, you can build joints faster, stronger, and simpler. In my opinion, everyone should have one of these in their workshop. For more information or to find your local Kreg tool dealer, visit www.kregtool.com or call 1-800-447-8638.